So this kind of instructor is not obvious because the things they do or the things they will say will not be pleasant. Holy Spirit, you are welcome here. You are welcome in my life. Hi guys, and welcome back to Pursuing Life More Abundantly. I'm glad that you've joined me once again. I hope that you've been well since the last time you saw me. So in our last teaching, we learned that our instructors are people that are already in our lives. They're people that we will already have in our lives. So we don't need to go out there looking for people to instruct us. We just need to look at the people in our lives and understand or investigate why God has placed them in our lives. So in an effort to help us understand the kind of instructors that we will encounter in life, or to broaden our perspective on what kind of instructors we may encounter, we're going to look at the life of Joseph and identify the instructors that he encountered on his path to his destiny. So there may be other factors that contributed to Joseph getting to his destiny and fulfilling his destiny. And I believe that one of the things that contributed to him reaching his destiny and being able to fulfill his destiny was because he had instructors in his life and he obeyed his instructors. You know, God spoke to Joseph about his destiny through dreams. And the dream to manifest, there was need for instructors. So God placed instructors on his path to his destiny. It could be the same case for us, that God has already shown us who we are destined to be. God has already spoken to us about whom we are going to be, maybe through dreams or vision, maybe through a man of God, maybe through his word, or any other means that he may desire to use. He has spoken to us about who we are destined to be. But we are yet to see the fulfillment of what God has said about us. Maybe the reason we are not seeing that is because we have failed to identify our instructors. So if God speaks and he tells you you are destined to be this kind of person, as we see in the life of Joseph, he spoke to him and told him, this is the kind of person you're going to be. You'll be a great person. Your parents will even bow before you. Your brothers will bow before you because you're destined to be great. So if God has spoken to us about whom we are destined to be, then our next step is to identify our instructors on our way to our destiny. So maybe the reason we have not been able to reach our destiny could be that we've not been able to identify our instructors. Or if we have been able to identify our instructors, then maybe we're not obeying the instructions that they're giving us. And if we are on our way to our destiny, that means we are in a continuous journey of identifying our instructors and obeying the instruction. So I believe Joseph reached and fulfilled his destiny because he was able to identify his instructors and obey their instructions. So we look at his life and identify the instructors on his path to his destiny. So the first instructor that Joseph encountered was his biological father. And in earlier teachings, we identified that our parents are our first instructors that God has chosen for us. So Israel, or you may call him Jacob, the father of Joseph, was his first instructor as he journeyed towards his destiny. And this happened to be when Israel asked Joseph to go and check on his brothers because they were out, looking after the flock as the flock grazed. One of the things that we can identify right away in Joseph is that Even though he knew that he was destined to be great, he'd seen in his dreams that even his parents would bow down to him. Even though he knew that he was destined to be great, he still honored and obeyed his parents. So this is a quality that we need to develop in ourselves if we are going to be instructed and be able to obey our instructors. We cannot think so highly of ourselves. It could be that God has shown you that you're going to be a great person in your family or, in your organization. Even though God has shown you that you're going to be great, we still have to have that spirit of not thinking so highly of ourselves that no one can instruct us. So that's a quality we see in Joseph, that he did not think highly of himself, and he was able to listen to his father and go as he was instructed, to go and see how his brothers were doing. So the first instructor that Joseph encountered was his father. And we can see that this is an instructor that we already have in our lives. We all have parents in our lives. Even though some may not have a biological parent, there is that person in your life that you refer to as your parent or who has brought you up. So our first instructor are those people that God has placed in our lives that we are supposed to honor no matter what. There are people that are in a place of honor in our lives. So when they speak to us, we're supposed to honor and respect and obey their instructions. So that's our first instructor. The second instructor that Joseph encountered on his path to his destiny was a man who found him at the field where Joseph thought that his brothers were grazing. And this kind of instructor, as we can observe, is a stranger. They are just someone who is maybe passing by in your life, or someone you'll encounter on the streets, someone you encounter once, a one-time encounter with somebody, but they instruct you in some way. And let's look at that portion of scripture. This is going to be Genesis 37, verse 15 through 17. And this is what it says. Now a certain man found him, and there he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, What are you seeking? So he said, I am seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they are feeding their flocks. And the man said, They have departed from here, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. And in observing how this scenario played out, it's not like Joseph found him there. It was the man that found Joseph wandering around. It would have been easier for Joseph to assume that the man knew where his brothers were if it was Joseph who found the man there. But when the man asked Joseph, What are you seeking? Joseph did not ignore the man, assuming that he wouldn't know, where his brothers were. He answered him and told him, I'm seeking my brothers. So it's important not to ignore bypassers in our lives. Somebody who comes into your life and maybe you're only going to see them that one time. It's not somebody that you know. They are a stranger to you, but they ask you something or they advise you on some issue. So it's important not to ignore those kind of people. My mentor, Prophetess Ernest Charlie, pointed out on a recent post that Abraham received his son or received the word about his son when he received the two angels and the Lord, when they were about to go and destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. They were passing by Abraham's home, and Abraham saw them and welcomed them and gave them something to eat. As they ate, that is when they spoke of Sarah conceiving. So in receiving strangers and not ignoring bypassers in our lives, we may receive the answer that we are seeking. we may receive that word that is going to bring that which we have been seeking. Just like Abraham, he'd wanted a son for so long. And when he received the two angels and the Lord, then the word came to him. So the second type of instructor that we may encounter in our lives is that someone who is a stranger to us, that bypasser who is just passing by in our lives, that one-time encounter. That could still be somebody that God has placed on your path so that they can instruct you on the next step to take in your life. So Joseph listened to this man and went on to Dothan, and he found his brothers there. The third type of instructor, or the third instructor that Joseph encountered, was an instructor that is not so obvious. It was not even obvious to me until I had my spiritual father speak about Joseph being sent to Egypt. And to me, I thought that Joseph was, sold to Egypt. He wasn't being sent. But the word actually says, and Joseph says this himself, and says that God sent me ahead of you guys. Joseph later on, when he decides to reveal himself to his brothers after they'd come to Egypt the second time to buy food because of the drought, he says that it was God sending him ahead so that lives could be saved. And this is Genesis 45, verse 4 and 5. And it says, "Then Joseph said to his brothers, 'Come close to me.' When they had done so, he said, 'I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now, don't be distressed and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you.'" Because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. So Joseph is telling us that this act of his brothers selling him to Egypt was not just them getting rid of him, but it was an act of God. God used their hatred towards him to push him to the next step towards his destiny. So this kind of instructors, or this kind of instructor, is not going to be an obvious instructor to us, because the things they will do to us or the things they will say to us will not be pleasant things. This reminds me of a statement my mentor, Prophet Charlie, said once in one of his teachings. He said that, "Don't go where you're not celebrated. Don't stay where you're not celebrated." So it looks like Joseph understood this concept, that if you're not celebrated in a place, then that's your instruction to leave that place. If you're not welcomed in a place, that's your instruction to leave that place. If you're not received in a place, then that's your instruction to leave that place. And those people who are treating you in a bad way or saying bad things about you are actually your instructors, and they're telling you to leave. So these are instructors that are not going to be obvious to us, because it's in a negative way that they are influencing our movement. But that movement could be God pushing you or pushing us to the next level in our life, or pushing us to the next step towards our destiny. And Jesus, when he sent out his disciples, instructed them in the same manner. And this is Matthew 10, verse 14, and it says, "And whoever will not receive you, nor hear your words, when you depart from that house or city, shake off the dust from your feet." Jesus is telling his disciples, if you're not welcomed in a place, if you're not received in a place, your next step is to leave that place, depart from that place. So we have to be aware of those instructors that are not instructing us in a positive way, but they're still instructing us. And one way to identify this kind of instructor who is not so obvious to us is to investigate whether we are celebrated in a place, whether we are received, or whether we are welcomed in that place. And upon realizing that you're not welcomed, you're not received, you're not celebrated, then that's an instruction to us to leave that place, to leave those people. So on today's video, we have identified 3 types of instructors that we may encounter on our path to our destiny. And first instructor are people whom God has placed in our lives. And these people have a place of honor in our lives. And one of the examples of those kind of people are our parents. Second instructor is a stranger, somebody you encounter once, or somebody who's just passing by in your life. And the third instructor is the one who is not so obvious, but the things that they do to you or the things they say to you are not pleasant. And we identify these kind of instructors by checking to see if we are celebrated, if we are welcomed, if we are received by them or by the place we are in. If we are not received in that kind of place, and then our instruction is to leave that place. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining me today. Join me again next time as we uncover more instructors that we may encounter in our lives as we look at the life of Joseph on his path to his destiny. Thank you so much. Have a great week. Bye.